everyone, I'm Rachael Ray, and this is I'll Sleep When I'm Dead. This is a podcast about drive, what fuels people that love hard work, and what we can learn from one another. I'm excited for everyone to join me for conversations with people I know and people I want to know better. Welcome to I'll Sleep When I'm Dead. Today, we are talking with one of my favorite people, period. I don't even know how to explain it. It's not just because I admire him as a performer, but Billy Crudup I've known for a very long time, but I know him because of one of the producers of this show, Tommy Crudup, his brother. And I have always admired him because he has an incredible work ethic. He's always my favorite character, the person who I feel has put in the hardest work of everyone in the cast, or when he's the only cast. And I mean that, the only cast. It just delights me that someone is capable of doing such a thing. So I thank Billy Crudup for joining us once again after all these years. Thank you, Billy.
Thank you, Rachel. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for being so supportive of me through the years. This is just an extension of this relationship. I'm looking forward to having this discussion. I love the introduction.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. I want to start in a weird place. You are a stage actor and a screen actor that I've admired for so long. But when it comes to one role, you played 19 different characters in one place at one time. I want you to walk us through that. You physically and mentally and vocally, everything, accents, everything. You changed your being. How do you do that? How do you process that?
There are so many things that flew into my brain when you started to speak about drive and why we continue to pursue things when we're able to pursue things that challenge us beyond our normal capability. And I think I have an awareness of several things. One of them is that I'm an incredibly fortunate performer. I've tried to take jobs, yes, over a period of time that have challenged me, but I've then gotten incredible opportunities to exploit that potential. And I went to acting school to train to be able to do this. And so I've got certain skill sets that other people are not, tools, precisely, other people are not always privy to. And so you have to honor that by applying them to things. And you don't always get an opportunity when you're working as a professional to apply them to things that take you outside of your own easy capabilities. You can certainly, once you reach a certain threshold, play certain parts, maybe again and again and again without the application of much effort. When I read this, somebody sent it to me. My first thought was, why in the hell would I try to memorize a 48-page monologue? I'm 50 years old. This is a ludicrous idea. And this may be in part to the way that Tommy and Brooks and I were raised.
Those are your brothers, Tommy and Brooks.
Those are my brothers, Tommy and Brooks. There is some sort of inherited urgency to life, some kind of drive. As you know from Tommy he's driven to control the environment that he's in and make sure everybody is safe and working hard. I'm driven by opportunity to be a better actor than I am. I feel like when I started out, what I had was a lot of energy and a lot of interest in the experience of theater in particular. And what I didn't have was a lot of skill to help shape that energy. So I was a big sweaty mess. I think one of my first reviews that I got as a professional, I was doing a George Bernard Shaw play. This is a language play called Canada. And my performance was notable for being a perpetual motion monkey that's what I remember the quote being, which is not great for a language play. So that perpetual motion monkey, I needed to shape into somebody who could be more effective as a performer. So when you get an opportunity with a piece of material like Harry Clark, in which you don't have any understanding of how you will accomplish it, all the alarm bells go off that this is a learning opportunity. This is a chance for you under a pressure situation to reach for application of skills that you have not yet had the opportunity. So you better take it, win, lose, or draw.
But it's 19 different people.
Well, when we started out, Rachel, it was funny. The way that David writes stories, David has been a storyteller for over 20 years in New York City. And he does these. This is David Cale, the playwright. And I think he mentioned at one point, he started doing it at first because he was a songwriter and nobody was listening to his songs or buying his songs. So he said, I'll write a play and I'll put my songs into the play and then I'll get a 2-for-1. And he's been doing them in his own way for, like I say, 2 decades, 3 decades down PS 122, La Mama. And he's an incredible performer who...
La Mama in Brooklyn, yeah.
He understands the nature of storytelling and his capacity to render characters. It's in the storytelling mode. It's not, he doesn't approach it in exactly the way that I approach trying to create an individual character. So what we found was the marriage of these two different ideas created something new for both of us. And Lee is the person who actually shaped it. So when you talk about playing these different characters, when we were first doing it, I could barely do 3 of them. It was too much to hold all of it into my head. And so I wanted to make sure I had the main
There's so
character,
many.
the
There's so many
storyteller.
people.
There's so many
Yes.
people. And the changes happen very quickly. So back to your point about drive, I've been driven since I read this play in 2017 to try to find a way to realize it in the way that I think David imagined it, that Lee directed it, that is just on the verge of my ability. And so every time we've remounted it somewhere, some of the other characters have had an opportunity to be exposed in a different way. And so
Isn't that fun?
It's been
I
great.
love it.
So to your point about drive and driven, I don't know why I keep wanting to do it. When Lee said, do you want to do it again in Berkeley and potentially London? My immediate response was yes. I wanted to capture it as soon as it came out of my mouth. It came out so fast, I didn't even think about it. I knew it was a terrible idea because it takes a lot out of me. But when I'm in that circumstance, the thing that excites me is the potential. And when you are as fortunate, as I say, as I've been, to not take the opportunity to really use all of your potential, you're missing out on something.
And that's what I love about you, Billy. And this is something that I love about all of your career, whether it's on stage or on smaller, big screens, who cares? You always take the risks. You always take the challenges. And what I love about the play is it's not only that you become all these different people, the physicality of it. So I want to know about that process. I want this podcast, this show to be about what can we learn? You always take challenges where you change yourself in every way, not just the direction you're going with your acting, but how you move your body and yourself. Let's talk about how you prepare for all these roles.
If you look around in the world, people are living in their bodies and they all live in very different ways. Their bodies carry with them a history. And so it's just worth noting when you're playing a character, why and how a character might carry themselves, where in their body their voice might be coming from. There's conscious and there's unconscious choices. So sometimes I'll read a script and I will have intuitively an idea of how I think this story is being framed and presented, intuitively an idea of what sort of role my character plays in the rendering of that story. And then I try as hard as possible to not judge that on my initial attempts reading it out loud. I can't tell you the number of circumstances that I make one of these bold choices and somebody goes, oh God, that's how you want to do it? And my response is always, oh, I wasn't trying to do anything. I just thought that was what we were doing. If we're doing something else, just tell me, direct me. Sometimes my mind works in odd ways. So I allow for my own personal intuitive to start the conversation. That comes from a place of security. And then I allow the insecure part of me that's a collaborative performing artist to be shaped by the director. To say, listen, if that's not working, I'm ready for something else. I feel flexible and primed. I'm here to help you. And frankly, as somebody who does not write, you said, you write your own material, you write your own recipe. I would call that a primary artist, right? I am not. I'm an interpretive artist. I don't write the material. I don't direct the material. What I count on is people who understand that version of storytelling in a more complex way, allowing me to then look great in their project.
Their vision, right.
As a service to them. Exactly. So in order to do all of that, the best way to do that is be flexible and resilient with your body so that you can shape things and allow them to grow and make mistakes and fine tune them. I mean, I'm sure there's a myriad of times where you've got a brilliant idea for a recipe and you try it and you're like, that's shit. That's not what I was going for. And then you go, wait, with a little bit of adjustment, I think I can see a path forward. And then that journey of learning about yourself, your own original instinct and your capacity to be resilient and change it. And that to me breeds the exploitation of your best potential in any field.
You have to have less ego. There is no new song. My husband is a lawyer and a songwriter. I am a cook. You are an actor. But there is nothing new in the world.
Correct.
half the time when I look up a recipe, I already wrote it.
Right.
So I can't write it again. Or somebody else already wrote it.
Well, there was a great production recently that was Enemy of the People, which was written by Ibsen. I don't know how long ago. It is exactly about today.
There's nothing new in anything.
Exactly. This moment.
It's all always over and over again. My favorite screenplay of all time is Network.
Oh, yeah. That is unbelievable.
And it is as relevant today
100%.
as it was, the day it came out.
To that point, Rachel, you can tell me what you think about this. I can't remember who it was, but probably the Greeks or somebody like that who said there's 7 stories or 9 stories. It's something to that. I can't remember what it is. And that can breed in you a kind of contempt for producing something original because it's all been done before.
It's all been done before.
But in fact, what I learned from acting school, particularly from Ron Van Loo and Paul Walker, some incredible thinkers, was while there may be a million stories, none of them have ever been told by you. You, Rachael Ray, have never been alive before in a way that could create these recipes, even though they are all the same sauces. Nobody can say it in my voice.
Right. There's only 3 chords in popular music.
Exactly. But the way that he shapes those. So learning about ourselves through our work and how that can be a really joyful. It's, obstinate because we all have our own limits as well. And we run into those when we're trying to test the boundaries for what we can and can't do with that limited source material. But the continued pursuit of that reveals, back to your point before, a kind of drive. And that over time adds up to something.
But you never think about that when you're joining a project. What do you think about? What excites you? What I'm trying to do is get to why everybody that works really hard, the people that I know that I truly admire, like you, how do you pick something and put your stamp on it? And why do you do that?
Well, first and foremost, as an actor, you have to work. That is just, you've got to make sure you pay your rent. That's it. I mean, that is no easy task. Let me tell you, the odds of being a successful actor financially over a period of time are very, very small.
Or cook, by the way.
Yes,
hello.
Or talk show host or whatever, all the myriad of things that you've done, or writer. It's very rare. And so when you have accomplished that and you feel like your financial stability is at least taken care of in the short term, then somebody presents you with an opportunity that its success or failure is irrelevant to your bottom line.
No, the success is exactly what you're just saying. It's that you have a choice at one point. You get to a place where you're at least secure enough to make a choice about the next thing.
That's right. So then when you do make the choice, exactly, you have to find something about yourself. So those number of times, and there have been a handful for me throughout my career, I've been truly incredibly lucky. Then the process of doing that, of exploring something that, and I'll tell you what speaks to me, back to your point about Network. When I first read the morning show, Network was the thing that I thought of. The thing that excites me is the potential to be a part of something that has significant effect on a single person for seeing it. That's it.
That's right.
I rarely think of things that, I was about to say you can see from my career, but things that are financially successful. Most of the movies that I've been in are not financially successful.
But they're amazing. They're amazing. Rudderless, by the way, if no one has seen Rudderless, I just want to say this is a movie you must see. There's so many things that you have done over the years that move my soul. And I just cry and adore every moment of your performance. And that was one of them.
Well, thank you, Rachel. No, but so what spoke to me in that? That's a great question. What spoke to me in that? To me, what spoke to me was this is the conversation that we're having in America at this time, particularly about gun violence and how it relates to young people and mental health, et cetera. And we continue to have this conversation. And actually, Lawrence Fishburne, who's in it, we were having a conversation and both of us had the same reaction, which was we just want to be a part of the conversation. This is not about taking sides, having some sort of moral authority or articulating it better than anyone else. But what we can do as actors is try to empathize with a wide swath of experience. And so to do that in a humane way is a complex undertaking. Mostly when you do a movie, you want to have good guys and bad guys. That's what's successful. Alien predator versus human beings. Those great tropes, they provide for wide audiences. The more nuanced storytelling, which is about uncovering ambiguity, discomfort, unusual unusual joy, all of those things. You're taking a financial risk when you do those because those stories are typically for a smaller, more ambitious audience. And occasionally you get something that captures the zeitgeist. But to your point before, when you have kind of made sure that your cost of living is in keeping with your professional income and you get a chance to take some artistic challenges, those choices, one thing you have to get comfortable with is failure. I loved Rudderless so much. The script was gorgeous. Working on it with Bill Macy was fantastic. He's incredible. It's heartbreaking then when not enough people see it or they introduce it in the movie and then they pull it the next week. So you have to be available. Hello Tomorrow, which was a show I did for Apple TV. This was, to me, something very close to my heart. And in that, I'm doing what I think of as a version of my dad. So there's an emotional proximity to that character that's important. And the fact is, we couldn't get enough people to see it. We didn't get renewed for a second season. And that's heartbreaking. So you have to be prepared in a certain way for what was the ABC Sports? The joy of victory, the agony of defeat. You've got to get into the competitive mode of win, lose, or draw. I know initially this is a good effort.
That's the beauty of life. You have to learn, and I think this is a big talking point about living a long life and having a long life and having a career, is you have to learn to understand when things are sad and what everything means ultimately to your choices. Not everything that feels bad is bad. Sometimes things that happen to you that from the outside look sad, they also help you propel forward and understand other people. Do you agree with that or no?
Couldn't agree more. In fact, I was picturing, obviously there's a myriad of ways that is applicable in life, not just in careers, where the only way out of a complicated situation is through it and not around it and not running away from it. You just have to face it head on. When I was first doing Harry Clark, and occasionally I will experience panic attacks. And one of the features of panic attacks is you kind of lose an idea of where you are. You get tunnel vision, your heart's beating through your chest, and you want to just run. You want to tear off your shirt and run somewhere, which is a very uncomfortable experience to have when you're in front of, say, 150, 400 people. And especially if you're the only person up there. And one of the first shows that we were doing, early on in the show, I lost my place. I called for line, which is a way of saying to the house management, please help me. I don't know where I am. But we didn't have any systems set in place because I'd never called for line before. And so from the booth way in the back of the theater, I hear, and I was like, oh, this is a bad idea. I have a full-blown panic attack. I'm watching my mouth move. I'm sweating like a hog. And the show, which is normally about an hour and 20 minutes, was under an hour because I cut 20 minutes unbeknownst to me. I just kept marching through it. After I finished the show, the director was incredible. She said, well, that happened. I marched out of the room. I was filled with shame. One of our friends was actually in the house who years later would recount her experience as I was telling the same story. She goes, oh, I'm so sorry, Billy. I was in the house when that happened. And I said, oh, I'm sorry. I bet that was tough. And Naomi was like, no, I'm sure it was fine. I bet you didn't even notice, Billy. And she goes, no, it really was the worst experience of my life. And I said, worst experience of your life? Not only did I have to do it that night, I had to march back to the theater the next night. To your point, Rachel, before, of resilience. And I knew that going through that's it. I had to go through that.
So I'm so happy you shared that because you have to forgive yourself. Sometimes we all hit a wall. It just is what it is.
Exactly. Sometimes it's just not there. This is what's novel about all of these approaches that you talked about, creating a meal, creating a song, creating a story. There's a million ways for each of them to go wrong.
Exactly.
There's this Buddhist thought, I can't remember the exact story, but it was something to the effect of a glass falls and shatters on the floor. And the student says, how terrible that the glass shattered. And the teacher says, but how beautiful that it ever existed. So just the moment that glass wasn't a broken, shattered thing is the part to celebrate. In the same way for artists and craftspeople, you can't dwell on the times that the audience hated you. You have to move forward. And ultimately, what I feel like is it's more like baseball. Your batting average is the thing that holds up over time.
Oh, I love that. I'm a sports fanatic.
So
I'm
just
a sports
imagine,
fanatic.
you are not the Rachael Ray who hit 3 home runs. That is not Rachel. You are not the Rachael Ray who had the golden sombrero and struck out 4 times. You are the person in the middle who over a period of time has delivered enough exactly to get into the Hall of Fame. So you got my vote.
So where do we put relationships in this? You mentioned Naomi and talking to her. I am very wildly lucky that I have my husband, but he understands I need my space. He needs his space. You guys are both wildly successful actors. How do you guys work that out? Do you consider and test material on her when you're learning a part and vice versa? Or do you just stay in separate corners? John and I largely stay in separate corners.
Any of these things that we're talking about doing, music, film, when creating food, the lack of predictability it's worth considering because it is not for everybody. And that lack of predictability and a bit of the carnival life and a little bit of rock and roll can sometimes be exhausting to the point that you're not properly taking care of yourself. And the fact is, if you want to be a part of this, you have to surround yourself with enough people who can both promote you, encourage your way of doing it, and help to protect you. And that is a lot to ask. And the fact is, Naomi and I have both been around for a while, so we have some level of appreciation about how to help manage one another. And we also are both really interested in acting. So we do talk about stuff. And I'm like that with all of my friends. Sam Rockwell and I will take time with each other's scripts. He'll do a scene for me. I'll break it down from my perspective. I'll do a scene for him. He'll break it down from his perspective. We really are not precious about keeping things to ourselves. We've got an incredible community.
Don't be precious.
Yeah, no need.
Life isn't about that. Yeah.
No, and it's a kind of silly, undignified profession anyway. I'm putting on other people's clothes for money. So you can't be too tough guy about that. It's a collaborative enterprise. If I was Orson Welles, fine. I could be precious as I want to be because I'm writing, directing, acting, and all of it. But I am interested in the collaboration. I am interested in people driving me to places that I hadn't expected before.
Well, he had an inauspicious ending fighting over green bean commercials and stuff. So I think it's cooler to keep working and be a little bit humble. Talk about humility. How important is humility to keeping a job and a life and drive going for you?
Well,
humility is a big deal. Humility is a big deal for me.
I would say in the vast majority of circumstances, particularly as an actor, you don't have to worry about humility because life will humble you.
It'll put you back in your place.
You can do as much as you want to try to stave that off, but life has a very, in my experience, persistent way of humbling you. Every time I feel that I have produced the world's greatest work, it is resoundingly followed up with some kind of message that I'm not the greatest in the world.
Right,
yes,
right.
Precisely.
The opposite, exactly.
It could come from anywhere.
How much do you follow what people say about you versus what you actually do?
Well, I'll give you an example. In Harry Clark, when I was just doing it, I felt it was important to read the reviews or some of the notable reviews while I was doing it because reviews in plays have history of affecting the audience response. And so I had a pretty clear indication of how the show worked from doing it in Berkeley and from doing it in previews in London. And I was preparing myself for some bad reviews that would change the reaction of the audience.
The tone.
Yes.
Yeah.
And in fact, there were a couple that were snide, which left the audience guarded. And had I not known that, I would have been thrown while performing it. Because when you're expecting response, there was a great quote from Tom Stoppard, who I had the great fortune of working with.
I was going to bring that up next, by the way. Another play I loved you in.
He was just incredible. And he said to me at one point, he said, I need you to just hesitate on that line before to give the audience an opportunity to respond. And I kind of paused and I was like, and he said, I'm not in need of a laugh. However, I will tell you this, laughter is recognition. And what I need to know is that the audience is recognizing the story in that moment because it's kind of a complicated idea. And the laugh will allow me to tell that they've caught up to the idea. Otherwise, I need to change it. So to the point in Harry Clark, I was like, I need to know what's happening with the audience. So I won't be waiting for laughs that aren't coming because they're more guarded because there were some reviews that came out. But I would say my relationship typically is see it and discard it as quickly as possible. So you know what's going on in the world, but you don't labor over it.
Don't waste your time on it.
That being said, my apartment is peppered with great quotes from reviews just to keep the old morale up.
That's nice. That's nice.
Yeah.
I don't put up anything. I say very few. I've gotten just a couple of little awards.
Those are the nice quotes. As you can see, I'm still waiting on them, but I've got the space cleared.
But I remember one night when TC and I and my friend Minnie, my dear friend Kara, we all went to see the Tom Stoppard play. You were in Arcadia. I think it's in all different periods of time. Yes?
Yeah, that's it. That's it.
You were absolutely incredible. It was so wonderful. And then I saw you do the 2 plays back to back at the Public Theater Uptown, waiting for Goddard.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, No Man's Land.
The double and No Man's Land. Insane. How many hours do you put in a week? Seriously. My mother could work 100 hours a week when she was young. She's 91 in 1 week from when we're talking. But my mom could put in 100 hours a week. How many hours? Do you have any rules about how many hours you put in for rehearsal? Because all of these projects that you do are so monumental to me. Just as a viewer, as a fan, it's so overwhelming. And I work a lot. I get up at 4 to 5 in the morning every single day of my life. And I work very hard. I write my stuff. I write my recipes. I cook my food. But I just can't imagine how many hours you put into this. Do you have any rules about that, Billy? Like, okay, I can only put in 50 or 100 or 80, or do you just do whatever the job takes?
That's it. I know from usually the first time we read it together, what sort of work that I'll need to do in order to accomplish what the director's asking. And I don't have any set rules about it. I just try to keep as flexible as possible as an actor and be prepared as possible to then, with the morning show, the Corey monologues, they take me typically 10 days if there's a long run that I need to spend parsing through what they call it text analysis, where you just try to figure out what every sentence, where the thoughts are coming together. When somebody speaks in a paragraph, they're thinking in a paragraph. So he thinks in paragraphs. I don't.
You have to parse.
I have to parse it up. Exactly. So that takes me, as I say, a pretty regular period of time. But with respect to other things, I am at the whim of my own capability and the director. I don't put a hard stop. And, by the same token, I'll work very hard and then I'll need to not work. I need to recover. Fortunately, I usually have the opportunity for that. So
I just want to know, what is your advice on how to live your best life? I want everyone to come away from this show with just how to work harder, but be happier at work than at play. What gets you out of bed in the morning?
It's a great question. And I suppose the clearest thing that I could come up with is my curiosity has not waned. I feel as ambitious about learning about life now. In fact, maybe even more so, because when you're younger, you have expectations. And so you're always marrying what's happening with what your expectations are. When you get to be in the middle or later part of your life, those expectations recede, so you don't have to worry about them. So what you can really think about is the nature of living and how you're doing it well or how you're not doing it well, how some of the habits that you have are feeding your curiosity and your ingenuity and how some of them are not. And what can you do to apply new skills to continue creating the best version of yourself? So I would say curiosity.
I love curiosity. That's a perfect answer. I love you, Billy.
I love you, Rachel.
I've known you many years, but I just hope I know you many years more. I adore you. I love you. Bye.
Me too. Thank you for having me on.
I'm Rachael Ray, and this is I'll Sleep When I'm Dead. Keep up to date with this podcast across all social media platforms at Rachael Ray and at rachaelray.com. I'll Sleep When I'm Dead is produced by Joanna Jojo Paredes, Tommy TC Crudup, Andrew Cappy Kaplan, me, Rach, And special shout out to my husband, John, the Kuzumano, who provides not only the music for our show, but he's been my wingman pretty much every episode of this podcast, and I'm using his studio for it. Thank you, honey. Also, we have editing help from Joel Yetten. Subscribe to this podcast on your listening site of choice, and thank you for listening to I'll Sleep When I'm Dead.